Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2023 Idaho Potato Bowl matchup between Georgia State and Utah State. Two teams that have had good seasons getting to this point. You got Georgia State 6-6 on the season. This is a team that started out the season 6-1. They were looking pretty good back in October, kind of fell off a bit down the stretch, but they got a chance to finish off the season on a high note, taking on Utah State, a team that's also at 6-6. It's been a roller coaster of a season for Utah State. This team has had some very low lows, but also some really impressive wins. So a pretty even matchup here coming up here in the Idaho Potato Bowl. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with their team trends. Georgia State lost to Old Dominion 24-25 to finish out the regular season. So almost won that last game. They kind of, the 4 games before that just got blown out week after week, and so to see this team at least be competitive in the last game is at least somewhat promising for a team that was really impressive in the first half of the season. But for Utah State beating New Mexico 44-41 in double overtime. This team has had a couple of double overtime games down the stretch in November. 2 of their games ended with wins in double overtime. So for Utah State to get up to 6 wins is definitely impressive. And I feel like this is a team too, I mentioned it before, this is a team that's been on a roller coaster this season. They've had some really strong wins, and then sometimes they'll follow that up with a really bad loss. So bottom line, this is a team that tends to be inconsistent, but they've also shown a pretty high ceiling at points throughout the season as well. Games be on Saturday the 23rd in Boise. Kickoff is 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going Utah State by 2.5 here, so the Aggies are a slight favorite. It actually opened up as a Georgia State 2.5 point favorite, but that has since shifted, and once you look into it, it does make sense why. Over under 59.5, and the FPI is going Utah State as well, 58%. You look at the bowl history for both teams. Georgia State 3-2 overall. They won back in 2021 in the Camellia Bowl, where they blew out Ball State. Also beat a Western Kentucky back in 2020 in the Lending Tree Bowl. So a couple of nice wins in recent time in bowl games for Georgia State. Did lose back in 2019 to Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl, but otherwise, this is a team that's had some decent success over recent time. You look at Utah State, they're 6-9 overall. This is a team that's been to 3 bowl games in the past 4 years. They were in the First Responder Bowl last season, where they lost pretty badly to Memphis, 38-10. Did beat Oregon State back in 2021 in the LA Bowl. That was an impressive win. And I did lose back in 2019 in the Frisco Bowl. Stat comparison, Georgia State 78th in points per game, 96th in points allowed. And overall, this is a pretty strong team in the rushing game, especially 49th in rush yards a game. But there is something you got to keep in mind here for Georgia State, is that the lead running back for Georgia State is Marcus Carroll. He's ran for nearly 1,400 yards this season, 13 touchdowns, a really impressive season for him, and definitely a guy that's been a standout. Problem is, he's not going to be playing in this bowl game. He is transferring out, and he is gone. So for Georgia State, this team's probably going to have to rely on the passing game, maybe a little bit more than they want to. This is still, you're going up against the 120th ranked rush defense in Utah State, but it's not going to be quite as easy not having Marcus Carroll in there. Honestly, if Carroll was in this game, I probably would favor Georgia State, but not having him, it's going to be not quite as easy to run the ball. So that definitely is an area of concern. You look at Utah State, though, in comparison to Georgia State, Aggies are 37th in pass yards a game. They're going up against the 129th ranked pass defense in the country. So for Utah State, it really shouldn't be a big issue moving the ball with the passing game. You got Jalen Royals, who's been incredible this season for the Aggies, over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. So the Aggies have got definitely an advantage, I would say, statistically here, even though the defense, their pass defense is pretty good for Utah State. The rush defense has been an issue, but obviously don't have to worry about Marcus Carroll, which is definitely a good thing for the Aggies. Your recent matchups, Georgia State lost to Old Dominion 24-25. They got blown out 3 straight weeks. You could say 4 straight weeks from late October until the LSU game. Lost LSU 56-14. Lost App State 42-14. Lost to James Madison by the same score, and got beat up by Georgia Southern 44-27. So it's really, you look at the 2 halves of the season, the first half versus the second half for Georgia State. It's just night and day. It's not even, it's hard to even tell that this is the same team from the first half to the second half. They were blowing out teams back in September, looking really good And then they lost to Troy 28-7. That was obviously a pretty brutal loss. But then you followed up with a couple of nice wins against Marshall and Louisiana. But then after that, things just took a turn and really went downhill for Georgia State. So that has been a concern. At least once again, this team was competitive against Old Dominion to show that this team at least has still has something. But obviously at this point for Georgia State, things really just died out in the second half of the season. But for Utah State, they beat New Mexico 44-41. Impressive offensive performance there. Not so much on the defense. And I mean, this defense really wasn't great down the stretch for this team. They allowed 45 to Boise State, lost to them by 35. Beat Nevada 41-24. Beat San Diego State in double overtime. Lost to San Jose State 21-42. So I mean, this team has gotten blown out a couple of times, but they've also had a couple of really impressive games as well. So for Utah State, this is once again an inconsistent team. They've been on a roller coaster this season, but after a 1-3 start, things actually turned out pretty good, I would say, for Utah State. Your key points: Georgia State 6-6. After a 6-1 start, this team has gone cold. This would be a great way for the Panthers to just save something from this season. I mean, it's really been disappointing in the second half of the year, but at least they got a chance to finish it off on a high note. Marcus Carroll transferred out, so he is gone, and the defense will need to have improved a lot. I will say that for this game. Utah State's a team that in November, except for the Boise State game, this team really was impressive on offense, scoring over 30 3 times. So this team finds a way to score, and I mean, they've also got a pretty good advantage, I would say, in Utah State going up against a pretty weak Georgia State defense. So the matchup's pretty good for Utah State. This is a strong team everywhere, but the rush defense and obviously not having to go up against Marcus Carroll is huge. And they were all around a much better team in the second half of the season. I don't know what happened for Georgia State in the second half of the season. That's something that I just will never know, and no one really will. But I mean, it just was ugly for the Panthers down the stretch, and I just don't have much confidence in Georgia State at this point in this season. So with that, let's get a prediction here for Georgia State and Utah State coming up here in the Idaho Potato Bowl. And in the end, I'm going Utah State. 30-27 is my predicted final score. Honestly, this could be more of a dominant win for Utah State. I wouldn't be surprised. I've got it being pretty close in the end. I do think this is a pretty even matchup for both sides here. I mean, Utah State is, really both teams are hard to trust to win a game right now, but I feel like Utah State at least showed some life in the second half of the season. They had a couple of really tough and nice wins in close games especially. So I think Utah State finds a way. They win it by a field goal. I'll say 55% towards the Aggies. I'm taking the under on the points. I know it's 59.5, which is a pretty high line. It actually opened up at 63.5, and it's gone down 4 points since then. So I do want to take the under still for sure in Utah State to cover the spread in the end. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, your score predictions, all of that. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.